The definition of what is and is not an anime has been drawing some controversy as of late. It's been around for a couple of years now, with shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender coming in and people saying, is this show an anime? And other people going, no, of course not, it's not anime at all. And then more recently with the Rooster Teeth show Ruby, or WBY, where the creators specifically state, this is an anime. Is it? The problem I have found with the definition of anime is that it's become subjective. It is not something that is clear-cut and easily defined. Everybody seems to describe it differently than someone else. Now, in my experience, there's two different ways to describe anime. There are probably others, but for the most part, these are the ones that are most apparent. The first is defining an anime by its place of origin, in this case, Japan. For the people who follow this mentality, defining an anime is fairly simple. Is it an animation? Was it made in Japan? If yes, it's an anime. If no, it's not. A lot of people like this definition because it's easily defined. It's like this line, this wonderful circular line that just easily encompasses everything and is not very complicated. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't problems with it. For the sake of argument, let's make a scenario here. Let's say we had Studio Bones. Let's take Studio Bones from their location in Japan, just pick it up and drop it somewhere outside Japan. It could be anywhere. It could be the UK, Australia, the States, doesn't matter. The entire studio just picks up and moves. And we can also assume for the sake of this argument that the entire Japanese staff stays and that they don't hire anybody local when they move. Let's just say they just picked up and moved. But they decide to make a show. Is that show considered an anime? It would be made by an originally Japanese company, by Japanese people, but it's not from Japan anymore. So would it still be considered an anime? And that's where the easily definable origin definition of anime starts to crumble down. Because everybody then comes in with just like, oh, well, it's made by Japanese people, so yeah, that counts. You're backpedaling. It's not easily definable anymore. Now, the other way of looking at it is saying that anime is defined by its style. If you were to put any anime side by side with things from like Warner Brothers or Disney, you could clearly see that there is a very big difference in just terms of style. You might not be able to specifically describe what that difference is, but you can notice it just by looking at it. You can just say, oh yeah, no, that's different. And people with this line of thinking believe that if an animated show has this specific style, then it should be considered anime. Under this mindset, shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender and Ruby, those are considered anime. Now, the problem with this line of thinking is, where do you draw the line? And how easy is it to define this line, to describe this line to people who aren't integrated into your culture? If anime is something that can be made by anyone, anywhere, as long as it looks like everything else that we classify as anime, then what really is anime in that case? Where is the line drawn? If you look at a show like Teen Titans, it has two different animation styles in it, if I'm remembering it correctly. It has the same animation style that you would see like in the older Batman animated series, but it also has those weird and zany animation styles that it's obviously inspired by Japanese animation. So would you classify Teen Titans as an anime? If you're going by style, then technically yes. And that's why this debate is very difficult, because there's pros and cons, and there's problems to every side, and both sides are trying to make little exceptions so that their little bubble does not burst in front of them. Like, what if you took a group of American animators, like a group of them, brought them over to Japan, and then they made an animated work? They're in Japan. Is that an anime? By the origin theory, it's an animation that was made in Japan. Would that be considered anime? The people in Japan would consider it an anime. Anything that is animated in Japan is considered an anime. If they watch SpongeBob on TV, they would consider that an anime. It's just the problem that the definition of anime is different in the West than it is basically everywhere else, and not everybody can agree on the definition. Now, the question I haven't answered yet is, Ark, what do you think? And you see, I kind of don't know. Like, for the longest time, I was under the belief of the origin theory, where I thought that for an anime to be an anime, it had to be made by Japanese people in Japan. That's what I thought anime was. But then when you actually sit down and think of it, you come up with those scenarios like the one I suggested with Bones, and then it doesn't make sense anymore. It's not easily definable. And that's what I liked about it, was that it was easily definable. You could just say, clear cut, this is not. Done. After thinking about it for a while, what I've concluded is that we use the word anime and the word otaku to describe something that those words were originally created to describe. Because like in Japan, anime is everything. Anything that is animated is anime. That's what it's like in Japan. And for the word otaku, A lot of the times, otaku is used as a derogatory word, but you can use otaku in relation to anything. You don't have to be an otaku of anime. You could be an otaku of trains, planes, and automobiles. If you want, go nuts. You can be an otaku for anything. You can be an otaku for reading. You could be an otaku for Western animation if you wanted to. But it's just here in the West where we've changed the definition of those words to describe anything from Japan, not anything and everything. So when someone asks me, do I consider something like Avatar: The Last Airbender to be anime? Technically, I can see why it would be. Like, I can see it, but for some reason, I'm not comfortable with saying that it is. And that's because I have used the word anime to describe that I am a fan of animation made by Japanese people in Japan. And it doesn't make sense for me to use that word to describe something like Avatar. Because yes, it is made in the style, but it wasn't made by Japanese people in Japan. And that is what I am a fan of. I don't want to say that, yes, Avatar is an anime, and then automatically I am a fan of it, because now it goes under that wonderful bubble that I have created. And that's why this argument exists, because there are people who aren't comfortable with saying, or just outright don't want to say, that things like Avatar and RWBY are anime, because they weren't made in Japan. And people are just not comfortable with changing the definition of the word that they have gotten used to. So what I think we need is a new word. A word that describes, I am a fan of this specific thing. I am a fan of animation from Japan made by Japanese people. And anime is the only thing that really has this problem. You don't look at Trekkies or Whovians or Browncoats and question what it is they are a fan of. The Trekkies are fans of Star Trek. Whovians are fans of Doctor Who. Browncoats are fans of Firefly. It's pretty obvious because those words were created to define that specific thing. With anime, we just borrow the word to describe what it is we are a fan of, but that's not the original definition of the word, and that is what has created a controversy that we are dealing with right now. But the solution is not easy. Even if we come up with another word, it needs to be widespread. It needs to be publicly used by basically everyone, because the definition of any word is determined by the people. It's not determined by any one singular person. It's not determined by the people who make the Oxford English Dictionary, for example. Even the people at the Oxford English Dictionary changed definitions of words based on public opinion. They added the word muggle. That is an official word in the Oxford English Dictionary. They are currently considering changing the definition for the word marriage. Definitions change over time, and if the definition of the word anime is changed to include things like Avatar and RWBY, I am perfectly fine with it. But we would then need a word to describe what it is I am a fan of, so that I can easily tell people what I do and what I am a fan of. Because I don't want to sit here and talk to people and they be like, oh, well, you're a fan of anime, right? So that means you must be a fan of Avatar. I don't want to say that I am a fan of Avatar or not. I haven't actually watched Avatar. I've been meaning to watch Avatar. I just haven't had the time to sit down and marathon the thing. But I don't want to say for shows like that, maybe shows that come out in the future, that I am a fan of that automatically. I don't want to say that. I'm fine with saying that I am a fan of anime in general, because to me, the anime comes from Japan, because that is the definition that I found out about the word from. That's the definition that I am used to. If the definition changes, I can be okay with that. But I need a new word. And that is what my problem with this whole conflict is. I can see both people are right. The people who want to believe anime only comes from Japan, I can see where you're coming from, and I agree with you to a large part. And then when I read something like Monty Ohm says that RWBY is an anime, I can't really tell him no, because in some ways he's right. It is. It just doesn't perfectly fit under everyone's definition, and that's the problem. So what do you guys think? Post down in the comments what you think the word anime means, or what you think the answer to this problem that we have right now is. Pass this video around to anyone so we can get this conversation rolling. If you feel like it, post a video response. Love those things. Please do so. Just one thing, though. Try and keep it civil, please. These type of arguments have a tendency to bring out the worst in some people who are staunch defenders of what they believe in. Just respect other people's opinions, and hopefully they will respect yours in return. And that's all we really need. Just be cool and be frosty. I'll see you guys next time.